You're good.
Do we have Duke here?
He was trying to get to the office on time. I spoke to him. He should be logging on, but we do have a quorum to begin.
Okay, so I only have Duke as being absent.
Okay. That jives with what I see. And I know he is planning on joining because I spoke with him this morning. All right. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next regular Board of Education will meet Wednesday, April 29th at 7:30 p.m. over Zoom at this point. So look for your links and we will continue to meet that way. Thank you everybody for rearranging your schedule. I know we have e-learning going on at home and work going on at home, so it is much appreciated. Public comment, I have forwarded everything to the board and confirmed receipt of all the emails we have received to this point. They will be in the record, and Nadine will also have hard copies. So if there's anyone who feels they didn't get my packets I sent to them, let me know, but they will be in the record and included with the minutes. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Adley and Ms. Cranberg regarding the district e-learning and our grading and reporting system. Dr. Adley.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for getting up and joining us this morning. A special word of appreciation to our parents. And I just see the camera just slid up a little bit, so we'll slide it back down again. We're good? So thank you to the parents and our school community for joining us this morning. It's very much appreciated. I also would like to welcome Megan Mallinson, Ellen Dunn, and Shelley Summers, who are participating around the virtual board table this morning. Thank you. There's a lot of issues that are on people's minds as we come towards the end of the school year, and clearly one of them is our grading practices and reporting system. As what are we doing? I want to acknowledge the work of the staff that've been instrumental in bringing us this far, and the discussion and how quickly they have done that. They've been working on this for some time, but as I most recently just shared with the board, it has been an iterative process based on the feedback we've been receiving from all constituents as of late last night. We continue to tweak the practices, and you'll see a version of that. I want to recognize Christopher Tremberg, my assistant. Christopher is also very helpful. He's been a high school principal of a high performance school, a secondary administrator for many years, so he's very helpful in the process. And I thought the first thing that he could present to the board would be, what would be easier than to talk about the grading system and changing the grading system. So Chris is going to present that this morning, and I know he's eagerly looking forward to that. I see him up there.
Chris, Alan now owes you one.
I will say that this, as I said last week, and the last week's input from the board was informative and very helpful to the process, as has been all of the emails that we have received either last week or any time throughout the last couple of weeks, and most particularly over the weekend and through today, has been extremely helpful. They have come from a variety of constituents, most being parents. We also had some students who participated in that process. As I said last week, the foundation of this is really that we are in unusual times, unprecedented times. And as I said, that our students are learning in unconventional environments in many ways. Our teachers are teaching through unconventional systems, and I think it's reasonable to expect that there's going to be an unconventional grading and reporting system, and that's kind of what we bring before you today. Any system I would share with you is imperfect, and I'll look at it and tell you that this is imperfect, but it's an imperfect world within which we are operating at the moment. But I believe that of the principles that we have developed as a foundational sort of guiding values have served as well, and then those number one being equity of all students in the Darien public schools. So building consensus on this has not been easy, and I won't say that there's total consensus always on this particular issue, or there is completely. I think if you take a poll of constituents and neighbours and parents and students, faculty members, there are different opinions on how we should address this matter. But we've come today with what we feel as educators is very sound, given the circumstances we find ourselves, and one that supports all of our students, which has always been the mantra and our guiding light in Darien Public Schools. With that, I'm not going to steal the thunder of Christopher. With your indulgence, I'll let him present, and after he's concluding presenting, we'll open up the board for discussion.
Sounds good. Mr. Tramberg.
Christopher, good morning, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just going to get started by sharing my screen. All right. I can't see you anymore, but can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Fantastic. So I do want to start by just saying thank you to everyone. This is the first time I've had a mid-year professional career switch, and doing it during a global pandemic it provides an extra challenge. But the community has been just outstanding, and working through this project of the grading and reporting practices has certainly been really insight into the talent of everyone across the system and the care in the community. So I do want to say thank you to everyone for that. I have just a few slides to just bring the written report to life, and it's broken down just as the report is by the guiding principles, then looking at the quarterly grading before we talk about the semester, and then a quick look at the elementary reporting as well. To start, we do have some guiding principles that informed how we approach this report. So when we talked about these things, what we're really talking about, number one, is we understand that there are people on the other side of all of these decisions, and that is the students, the families, and the teachers. And we have to understand that when we are making decisions at times like these, that we have to show tremendous care for the people that are needing to implement these things. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're maintaining the academic integrity of the high-performing system that we have. So with that said, we don't want to just maintain, but we do want students to keep learning, and we do want to move through our curriculum the best we can, given these times. The other piece is we want to position students to be successful in whatever their next chapter is. So for third graders, that means we want to make sure they're as ready as can be, given the situation for fourth grade. For our juniors, we want to make sure they're ready to engage in that college search process, which they're already in. And for our seniors, we want them to be ready to leave and have adequate closure to their experience in Darien. So I'm going to jump right in to how we are looking at quarter four. And the system is really three components, and one would be earning a pass with distinction, a pass, or no credit. We've thought about this really, I think the best way to describe it is in two lanes. So given the situation that we're in, we want to be aware and cognizant of really the behaviors and approaches that students have to work and their academic achievement. So when you look at the descriptors of these that are in the report, when we talk about pass with distinction, we're talking about really exemplary performance that exceeds the grade level expectations for that work, in addition to behaviors like always signing into class, always turning your work in on time, and when that work is turned in, it is really done exceptionally. The next category is pass, which the language of that really speaks more to proficiency and meeting the grade level expectation, and also still signing in and turning in your work at a proficient level. And then the language of no credit is really captures students who just are not engaging in the e-learning experience. And we also understand that sometimes that's beyond the control of the student. So the no credit does become an incomplete, And with the commissioner's guidance, the incomplete remains an incomplete until the start of the next school year. So the students will have adequate time to get that work in. So just as we transition into talking about, well, what does that mean for the end of the year and the semester? I think it's important to be clear with these 3 bullets that any student can earn a pass with distinction. That's in the middle school or the high school, so that's not reserved for any group of students. With that caveat, I will say pass with distinction is work at an exceptional level, and that's important to put out there because of just preparing for the next slide. The high school students will receive a semester 2 grade, and this is a combination of their quarter 3 letter grade they received and the quarter 4, for the lack of a better descriptor, alternative grade that they're going to receive, meaning the pass with distinction, the pass or no credit. Part of the thinking behind this is the preponderance of quarter 3 happened while students were still in school, and students did earn a letter grade, and we do want to honor the work that was done and the grade that they earned there. In the middle school, however, students will receive that 4th quarter grade, but they won't have an end of the year grade. And the major reason is because students are in year-long courses at the middle school, and it would be really complicated to determine an end of the year grade in a way that made sense. And all of the decisions for their grading have already been made, such as placements for next year. So how this turns into a semester grade, this is just a chart that provides an overview. So students who earn an A- for quarter 3, if they have a pass or pass with distinction quarter 4, they have 1 incremental increase. I'm just pointing this out as the outlier, because if students have an A-, the most increase they can possibly get is 1 increment. So that's why it's standing out on its own line. If students earn a pass with distinction at a B+ through F level from quarter 3, they will earn 2 incremental increases in their semester 2 grade. And students who have a B+ through F who earn a pass will have 1 incremental increase. And then the A through F obviously is no credit, which becomes an incomplete until that is resolved. Just a couple of examples to bring that to life a little bit. Column 1 here just shows sample Q3 grades. If Q4 is the sample of pass with distinction or pass, and then that 3rd column, semester 2, is how that final letter grade is determined using that system. So I need to put out there that you can see that students that have a pass with distinction or a pass will have an improvement in their grade. So language that many districts have used, both public and private schools, is developing no harm systems. So clearly this is a no harm system as long as students are engaging in their work and turning in their work. And if you think back to those 2 lanes that I talked about, the behaviors to work and then the academic achievement, given these times, we are really honoring the students engaging in their work and the behaviors in that way. With the elementary, we worked really hard to try to keep things as streamlined and common as possible. So we kept the language similar. So instead of this, that top represents what you have seen before, trimester rating of 1, 2, 3, or 4, and that corresponds with below standards, approaching, meeting, or exceeding. And so we're really taking the language and creating a binary system of students who are approaching standards and then the students who have met standards as they go on to the next grade level. And I have a more specific example to make that make a little more sense on this next slide. So this is just a sample. This is a 4th grade zoom in on a progress report. That top half represents currently what parents might see for the geometry scoring in the trimester. And the bottom half is an example of what would be proposed. So that top half, you see that score of the 3, which would have been meeting standard. And on the bottom, for this 3rd trimester, students will receive an M for met or an A for approaching. This is just because we feel that we can only be so diagnostic during this time in the assessments that we can provide. And this will give families and students an idea of where they're ending the year, and really helping the teachers who are receiving these students next year understand where the students are and where the students finished. There's also an opportunity for comments, as there always has been, and we'll work across the schools to make sure teachers are using that feature with some consistency. So I know that's a lot of information and a lot of talking, but I would love to talk about these things with you.
Okay, so I just want to acknowledge, we think there were some tech issues in the beginning, and those live streaming probably didn't hear Dr. Adley or I's comments in the beginning. The short version of that is we thank all of the stakeholders who emailed us over the past few days and weeks, and we have shared those thoughts with the board. You really saw the most important part, Mr. Tranberg's presentation, and we will open that up now to board comments and questions. Mr. Deneen also joined us. He had some of those tech issues, but he is on now, Deb. Deb, did I see you raise your hand with a question? And then Jill, I'll go to you right over, Deb.
I do have a question and a comment, and I won't take up too much time, but the first question I have is, how are we going to reflect the AP and honors courses in the calculation of the GPA? I do not see that in any of the memo that I read. So if you could please touch on that at this point, that would be great.
So they are going to, Chris, do you want to just continue, or? Well, anyway, the GPA is going to be calculated under the same scenario that it is at the moment of those additional GPA weights will be included. And if Megan Magnuson's there, if I say something's not correct, that's my understanding of what will happen.
Okay, Mrs. McCannon.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you to the staff, I think, first and foremost, for going through a fairly thorough process. I appreciate the opportunity for the board to talk, and I'm so grateful that parents had a number of days to write in their thoughts and feelings so that we could hear from the community. Can you talk to the work that you all did with teachers and others within the school system to see, Mr. Tranberg, you talked about your ability to assess being somewhat impacted at this point. Can you talk about your conversations with teachers and some of the educational work that you did to back up this decision?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So this is pretty complex, and it wouldn't be accurate if I didn't say that this final proposal is a compromise. So everyone had to give a little, and no one is getting a presentation of the perfect system. At the secondary level especially, teachers provided input to the administration through various mechanisms, through the department leaders, through the building administration. And as this received through different iterations, we did go back and forth and kept making those adjustments. At the elementary level, there has been less communication with teachers, and that's somewhat by design. And what I mean is, at the secondary level, we're really presenting an entirely new system. At the elementary level, what we're doing is we're going to use the same model, the same progress report model, but we are identifying what we're calling critical standards, and we're just going to highlight those critical standards on that typical progress report. So the teacher input is still coming. So if they're listening out there, please don't think that they're not being heard. But this is where we really need to hear from them on what are those critical standards and what are the critical assessments that we feel like we can really do with fidelity, or implement with fidelity, for the lack of a better description. So we are looking at what's feasible, what will give us accurate information about student achievement at this time, and really make those decisions there.
Thank you.
Oh, did you say me, Tara?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear you. Hi, Chris. Just piggybacking off of that, your comment of an entirely new system at secondary. I guess one of my concerns is we are creating a whole new rubric, which, as I read it, is complicated and has some pretty high standards in it. How are you giving the staff the guidance on how to use this rubric, and how are you ensuring consistency in its application across classes and grades?
So I'll certainly invite Ellen or Shelley to jump in on this too. But my thinking is we have administrative leaders at the department level, and we have collaborative time for teachers. And a big bulk of that time will really be doing exactly that. What does this mean for not only the content area, but classes are different. And that should definitely be an opportunity for teachers to calibrate how they're going to report those grades at that time. I would say the biggest challenge, to your point, is that because we have to kind of put aside what we know about traditional grades. And when we're calling this a new system, that's exactly what it is. So the third quarter grade is the grade that the students earned. This fourth quarter grade is really somewhat of a decision factor that helps increase by 2 increments or 1 increment, or the students are not really engaging in their work. And we want to, again, recognize that that could be because of reasons beyond their control. So give them the opportunity to do that. And I agree with you, the language for pass with distinction is a high standard. And part of that is it's those 2 lanes again, right? So we want to recognize that if students engage and get their work in, then they will earn that increment during this time. But if students engage at the highest level possible and are really showing exemplary work, they can earn that pass with distinction. And just to circle back to your question, teachers do have times built together in their schedule so they can do that work together.
So, Katie, just to, first of all, it says sort of draft rubric still, because in all honesty, we're being very, very transparent to make sure people understand what the structure is behind this. Is it different or is it not different? Rubrics are not, these are devised by the staff, and they're not uncommon for staff to use those. So that's not a completely different paradigm. It is a different paradigm in how we're using them at the moment, but that will continue to be a work in progress. And we felt that it was important to share with the board and actually the community the system that's going to be used for individual assessment and the semester 2 assessment. I'm happy to invite Ellen or Megan if they want to comment on that or otherwise.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Ellen and Mrs. Somers and Megan about how you see the practical application of this working.
So I'll start with we're thinking that our PLCs or our like subject teachers would really look over the scope and sequence of the curriculum and identify the knowledge and skills that we feel are most necessary, not negating that all content is necessary, but really picking out those things that we feel are most necessary for a student to proceed to the next grade, and to look at that rubric. And not only to define what exemplary work is, but to look at each individual student's work, because there might be a student, like a middle of the road kind of learner, who is really doing exemplary work for that student. So I think that this rubric helps us to individualize how we look at student work, and also to try to understand and articulate the knowledge and skills that students need as they progress through the curriculum. Our teachers are very used to implementing rubrics for all kinds of work, but as far as grading goes, rather than assign a multitude of tasks that have to be designated as pass with distinction, the activities would all be that are assigned digitally would all lead to mastery of the knowledge and skills, and then the like subject teachers would decide how they would really look at the depth of understanding for each individual student. So I'm not worried about this rubric because our teachers do a job, but I think that the most here is to allow them some collaboration time so that they can all be on the same page regarding what mastery does look like.
Thank you. Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you. I would echo what Shelley has said. I think this is an exciting opportunity for our teachers to take a look together at exemplary work and mastery and what those questions are. And I trust that they are able to use a rubric to evaluate work. They do that consistently in their grading as it stands. So I think it'll be an opportunity for them to work together to remove the 91 and the 92 from the mix and really look at the holistic view of our students and their work. I have complete confidence in them being able to do that and to communicate with our students about that the whole time. That's not going to become a surprise to our students as learners. Those expectations will be clear. And the work will be done with these rubrics within each department and within each course.
Thank you. I saw another hand go up. Mr. Burke?
Hi, good morning. First, thank you for the presentation, which I imagine will be on the website for others to view later. It evidences, creative thought and critical thinking, which I think is important in these unprecedented times. My specific question is on page 4, the second full paragraph that starts, while grading systems aim to serve the needs of students, you go on to talk about working with families to address extenuating circumstances. Can you tell me what kind of extenuating circumstances you are aware of so far and what you anticipate doing to try and address those?
So I wouldn't say this would be the first time by any means that our district has tried to work with students and families with extenuating circumstances. So those are things that they're comfortable with, that they know about, and that they deal with on a regular basis. This new paradigm, there could be situations, social and emotional issues, issues at home, logistical or otherwise, that really at a new level really interferes. But fundamentally, this is based on life is not the same. It's just not. I'm not going to pretend that we know that everything that the kids are dealing with, nor, in all honesty, what our staff are dealing with as they try to deliver education in this form. Our professionals are used to identifying issues that need addressed. I would encourage our parents where they feel the need to, there's a necessity to advocate for themselves and to reach out to our staff. You know who that is, our support staff, represented both by our principals and our Megan, our guidance staff and psychologists and so on. They know what those are. It might be that there's students out there who are just struggling to get through the day, and we think they're doing okay, but they're dealing with distractions or otherwise, and anywhere along that mental health continuum, in all honesty. It can be physical, social, or mental wellness. And our professional staff, without it sort of identifying, Mike, if you don't mind, just identifying specific things, but I'm just trying to describe in general some of the things. My most important thing is to understand, do they know that they can advocate? Do they have an avenue to advocate? And is that clear for them to do that? Megan is well served to answer this question if she wants to respond a wee bit more in detail than I am. I'm consciously avoiding examples per se, but it's the situations where social, emotional, mental health and wellness or logistics are just making it even more impossible to function in a past scenario or another scenario. Meg, could you comment any further than I have in that?
Yeah, I would echo all of the examples that you gave. We do have families who are dealing with illness of one kind or another, and we're sensitive to that. I think there were students who we were working closely with prior to the closure that our staff is continuing to work closely with, and has reached out very proactively on a regular basis, both our support staff, our teachers, our administrators working, very closely with those students. And then there are students that perhaps weren't necessarily on our radar as having any sorts of concerns prior to this. And through proactive reach outs of our staff, and also some self-advocating on behalf of the students and the families, we've been made aware of those and have connected those students and families with appropriate resources. And so I think there's tremendous lines of communication. We're trying to continually communicate to families what those venues of communication are. There's a variety of them, and just, trying to be in very close contact. The staff, as you can imagine, talks constantly. The middle school counselors are meeting frequently with each other, with the administration. The high school, we're still continuing to hold our student assistance team meetings and our department meetings, and so the staff is in constant communication amongst each other with administration, and we're just all trying to wrap around any student or family who needs our help during the same.
Not to mention that the parents juggling all their responsibilities. I don't pretend to be in everybody's home. That's not. I'm not going to make that assumption. With more and more people out of work, and so families are stressed, and that gets passed on to kids. So all those things.
Yeah, I just would say I've been duly impressed with the communication of the guidance, certainly 6 through 12. So thank you for that. And I've heard from a lot of parents that they have appreciated that. So thank you for keeping that up.
Thank you, Tara.
Any other questions? Mr. Janine.
Hi, thank you. I echo the rest of the team, all the hard work that's been done, and just thank you so much for all of that. Just this might be for Principal Dunn, and I don't know who else of her team is on the line, but Ellen, we have a great network with the colleges and universities that come and visit the high school throughout the year. Is there anything that you're hearing or your interaction with those folks around what they're looking at and the challenges they see with the discussion we're having today? And I would ask that as you gather that information, we think about some type of communication plan out to folks, especially juniors and sophomores in high school, as to what we're hearing and what we're seeing. I think a little of it has to, we have to put people at ease that across the spectrum, colleges and universities understand that our high schools are going through these challenges.
For sure. And I think it's one of the things that has made, these decisions complex for all schools. And Megan will jump in, I'm sure, on this. She and I have sat on a few webinars with college admissions. It's been something that's been very important to us over the last few weeks. We know our seniors, for example, are making their decisions. We've tried to support that, and there are questions about whether schools will open in the fall. So that is adding to their stress, and we're very aware of that. We have the junior class that's anxious about how they're going to present themselves, and we're constantly having those conversations. And so I do think that having semester grades is going to reduce some of that worry for our junior class. That being said, the colleges have, I think, Megan, I'm not incorrect, 100% of our communication has said that they understand that this is a difficult time for all educators and students, and they're experiencing the same thing with their own students on their campuses. As we know, many of us have students who are home from college in our homes that are dealing with the same kinds of challenges and making decisions about pass fail versus grades, et cetera, and wondering whether school will open for them again in the fall. So, everyone, as I think Dr. Adley started the conversation, there's no perfect answer. They all have said that they are going to look holistically at our students and everything that guidance does so well in supporting our students in the process will continue through their letters, through the teacher letters. Keep in mind that our teachers, some of them write 50, 60 letters for our students every year. So that will continue because they know who they are and they know them so well. So Megan, jump in if there's anything that I missed there.
Again, I would echo all that you said, and just, our caution too is that the schools, to your point, Mr. Deneen, have said pretty much 100% across the board, like this is going to be an asterisk semester for everybody in the country. And there is some comfort in that, in the sense that it's not unique to Darien, it's not unique to Connecticut, that the schools themselves, the universities themselves are experiencing this. And so there's a deep level of understanding of the impact and the potential impact that this could have on families. As Ellen said, part of the decision about grades was to allow our kids to be competitive, because the caution here is that it's very hard to predict how colleges or universities are going to handle this. They have been across the board. We will work with our students. We will never penalize students for circumstances beyond their control. But when it is within our control, we certainly want to make sure that our kids have our best position to be as competitive and walk through whatever door that they'd like to walk through. So we're looking at, the grades was sort of the first piece of it. We're turning our attention to the standardized testing component of helping our kids. A lot of schools have gone test optional for next year's cycle, understanding that many students may not have had the same opportunities to test, and they're trying to make policy that will fit kids across the country, students who don't have the support and the resources that our students are so fortunate to have. And so absolutely, we're hearing that they will work with our students. That is the message I've received all the way up the line to the most competitive schools in the country. But we are going to work to support our students and to keep them best positioned going forward.
So I would like to thank Megan, because she's been instrumental in this part of it. And just to profile a potential question, if you weren't confident in grades in the fourth quarter, why are you in the semester then, right? That's a reasonable, and honestly, based on the feedback you've heard from Megan and working closely with the colleges who are still working late themselves, we feel this is the best system to position our students as best as possible. Should colleges go down the line that Megan is potentially thinking, or whether human nature kicks over or whatever, just feel it's the best. So that's kind of why we did that.
And just to add to that, if there's any students who had a more particular, all adults are impacted by this, but if a student was impacted by illness, or if this e-learning environment was a significant struggle for them, the counselor letter really is one of the primary purposes of the counselor letter is to highlight those extenuating circumstances that may have impacted a student's performance. That's always been the case, and that will continue to be the case. So our counselors are working closely with kids and families, and will continue to articulate any extenuating circumstances that may have impacted them beyond what we're seeing as a typical impact during this time. And then I did publish, it was about 2 weeks ago, a fairly lengthy kind of guidance update, as the world of college admissions and testing and AP and SAT is sort of changing by the minute. I have a draft of another, just as things have changed since the last one. So we're going to continue to update resources, websites, things that our students can be accessing during this time to your point, trying to ease the comfort a little bit and make them feel a little bit more informed. You may have heard that it was Ellen's wonderful suggestion that we try and connect our alumni with our current juniors and seniors via Zoom. So I think we had about 120 juniors and seniors engaged with, I believe, 60 or 70 alums and 80 plus different Zoom sessions at the end of last week. We're gathering feedback through a Google form from both alums and students, but the feedback has been really wonderful, that students felt a little bit more informed. They learned a lot about the schools. They felt the alumni were relatable because they were Darien kids. And so those kinds of experiences we're continuing to develop and think about how we can support kids and families in this unprecedented time in that college search process, which we know is so important and sometimes can be a little unnerving in typical circumstances. So we're continually looking at programmatic offerings that we can do as well.
Mr. Maroney.
Yeah, I have, well, first off, Megan, my daughter participated, my younger daughter, who's a freshman in college, participated in one of those Zoom sessions last week, and she thought it was very great. She said the kids came in she couldn't even say her name. They just started asking questions, and for 30 minutes, they just went through it. So she thought it was very interesting.
That's wonderful. Thank you to her as well. Thank you.
But I have a bunch of questions, so I'll try to do my easy ones first. I guess my first question is, colleges will only see the semester 2 grade, not whether you have a pass or pass with distinction, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then my other question is, what do we do with students who have an A? We didn't show what happens with an A. So an A, you can't go down, I assume?
That is correct.
Okay. And then my two bigger questions, I think, are one was, do we have a limit on pass with distinction that only 10% of the class can get that 25%, or is it unlimited?
So,
I would go.
okay, Megan, you want me? Sorry.
I do not. I was going to defer to you or Ellen.
Okay, all right. No, that's fine. You'll see that, and I would encourage our parents once we post this to go to all the Q&As that we have attached here. That's available. That's available to any student. But by definition, it says distinction, right? So we're expecting students to sort of step to the plate. Look, clearly this system supports students, right, and advocates for students. If students can do their work and work through this, everybody's better off, right? The area of pass with distinction is what it says, and there is no expectation that 20%. It is available in all the classes, but it is a high standard. But I think that's fair whenever we're also sort of advocating and proposing and presenting a scenario where all kids are improving by the end of the school year. So it's fair to expect that is a high standard.
Okay.
So Mr. Maroney, just to put a clarifying point on your question, students with A's do not go down, because I think we are interested in preserving rigor, with the exception if they receive no credit, then that's an incomplete. So they still have to do their work. There's nowhere here where no one is not. As I read this, feel free, the educators who put this together, as I read this, as long as you're doing your work, you are not harmed, but you are held to the standard of doing the work of Darien High School.
Fair.
That is
And one last question with this. And first off, I forgot to say thank you for all the work that you did. I think this is arguably the best compromise to appease the most people. As you said, it's going back to what you even said last week. It's non-traditional learning and a non-traditional grading. I also would like to thank all the parents and teachers as well who wrote to the Board of Education. It was super informative to get perspective, differing perspectives. I thought that was super informative. My last question is, for the parents and the students, how can they check grades to know whether they're pass or pass with distinction? How do they determine where they are during the course of the next quarter?
Well, that's a fair question in terms of I want to make sure that well, right now they're getting feedback, right? So that feedback should continue, and when the usual channels of communication, and Meg and Alan and Shelley would know those better than I would, in terms of how parents can receive the feedback and how they receive the feedback now. Maybe perhaps Alan or Shelley or Meg, could you just elaborate a wee bit, because I don't want to pretend how that feedback is going at the moment.
We're working now with Aspen. Oh, sorry. We're working now with Aspen to be able to enter pass with distinction, pass, and no credit on certain assignments, major assignments during the quarter. And then we'll be setting up a system to alert parents and students to progress during the course of the quarter. So on certain dates, we'll create an assignment within Aspen. Basically, we have to trick Aspen to work in our new system, right? We've created a new system, and Aspen is not going to cooperate. It likes numbers, right? And we're not going to be using numbers. So basically, we'll create assignments within grade books of teachers that we can alert families and students to take a look on, let's say, May 1st, for your progress as of today. And that would give a pass with distinction, no credit as a progress point. We won't be able to push out progress reports, I don't believe, through Aspen in this new system, but it will give students and families a gauge of where they stand as we move through the quarter. And teachers will have to take a look at the holistic set of assignments that they're using within each course. So the preponderance of pass with distinction on major assignments would arrive at a pass with distinction for the quarter. And again, a high standard, but certainly attainable by our students.
Plus, I think that it's, I'm sorry, Deb, it's really important to be very clear and open with parents and students about what the definitions and the requirements for each of these areas on the rubric are, and to define them clearly, especially to our students. We have a really good system of contacting parents if we're concerned about performance, which of course we will continue. But I think if everyone's on the same page about what those expectations are and what a pass with distinction looks like for each individual student, that will be clear based on the work that is submitted and on our communication, constant communication with parents.
Thank you. Mrs. Ritchie.
I wanted to touch on the no credit on the rubric. And I guess as I look at the rubric, I'm concerned about the student that was an A student throughout the entire year and then got into e-learning and really started to struggle. And let's hope this doesn't happen, but then they earn that no credit for the quarter 4, and then they get an incomplete, and then everything that they've done for those first 3 quarters is erased. So I guess I'd love administration. And by the way, thank you so much for all the work that went into this. It's an incredible document. It's very detailed and thorough. And I know you guys have worked incredibly hard. And thank you to everybody who's written in with their comments and suggestions. But I'm hoping someone could just walk me through that scenario. And I realize we'll probably have people reaching out to these students, but that seems like a scenario that I wouldn't want us to ever be in, where a student who is excelling throughout the entire year really struggled in e-learning. All of a sudden they get a no credit, and then everything that they've done for the 3 prior quarters has been erased. So if we could chat on that would be great.
I can start with that. So I think there's 2 parts to that. The first one is with the commissioner's guidance. Traditionally, the high school had about a 14-day turnaround to resolve your incomplete, and now they have throughout the summer to finish their incomplete. So that is one place that's kind of giving the extension there, and that's just the gift of time more than anything else. The other piece on the written report on page 4, there is that paragraph that was referenced earlier that starts, while grading systems serving all the needs of all students. It does have that provision in there for exceptions. And the kind of situation you're presenting right now is a really good example of an exception. We don't expect that to be the norm for many students, and that's when they would work with their counselor or administration, and that could be instigated by the administrator, the counselor, or the student, because I know everyone is watching closely how students are engaging.
I would imagine, going back to the last question about if we are on Aspen showing the regular reporting of how the kids are performing on the rubrics. Well, if that's fallen off real quickly from an A student, I think we would be in a position to intervene with that. I think Jill had a question.
Mrs. McCammon.
Thank you. Picking up on the notion of incompletes, but a little bit more than that, can we talk about sort of both from a general ed and more specifically from a special ed perspective, what we're looking at in terms of tracking and watching children who may not be able to access their education. And I'm specifically curious about, just from a planning perspective, how we're thinking about it. I know thank you, Chris, for just talking about the time extension. That certainly helps. But I'd like to hear also from you all in terms of what we're tracking, and I'd like to hear from special ed. We know that some services were not able to deliver in the way that we would hope, and we also know that there's some, I think, in my opinion, and from what I'm seeing, a little bit of a lag, because we've had to establish the educational environment first before we could figure out how to offer the supports and accommodations. So can we talk to that, how that's sort of, whether that's having any impact on these incompletes or whether we're moving forward? I just would love to hear from Shirley on that.
So my only caution is an excellent question, Mrs. McCammon. If we hold that, if we answer that question in the context right now of our grading and reporting, and Jill, I actually think there's a very much broader question there that maybe we can put on next agenda as well. I just want to be careful because this is a special meeting. But if we can do that in the context of grading, reporting, and timelines, and then Mrs. McCammon duly noted and will be on our next regular meeting schedule.
Thank you very much.
So good morning, everyone. I'd like to really respond to that exactly in that framework, the idea of grading and reporting. And just, and I know everyone's aware of this, but just in response to your question, Jill, I think principals, building level administrators, program directors, special education teachers, general education teachers have all been mindful during this process of what reasonable accommodations and modifications look like in a digital environment, knowing that it does look different than it does in school. I mean, for example, preferential seating, refocusing and redirecting, checking for understanding don't have that same opportunity in a digital platform as they do in school, or it doesn't look the same. But there are accommodations then we can remotely try to parallel as great as we can, such as extended time, staggered deadlines, looking at modifications, making sure that there may be some extensions for projects. So we're being mindful along the way and supporting all of our students with either their 504 plans or their IEPs. And I think we've done it. Everyone's been mindful in this process also about grading and reporting. I think there's also been a lot of individual opportunities with either related service providers, special education teachers, and general education teachers to support students with extensions during the school day, during this digital time. So I think we can say we were thoughtful, we were proactive, and we continue to be. Just to expand on what Shelley had said earlier, the opportunity for all students to have passing with distinction or looking at that is based on where they are now and what their performance is during this time. So I think it does have access and equity in that design to the best of our ability. So I just did want to comment on that. I think everyone's in agreement and was thoughtful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board questions with regard to grading and reporting? What I will tell you is our role in this is oversight, boards of education, and I did double check this. With our attorneys, boards of education do not have grading policies. That is an operational matter. Deb's question was good on our honor and AP, and our policy on that remains the same. So our role here is oversight to understand it from the educational professionals, and unless there's an extreme educational objection that the board needs to bring forward, this would be the superintendent allowing us questions, oversight to hear from the public, and we would move forward. So that's kind of our role right now. So if we have more questions on this, we can entertain them, or we can ask superintendent to post so the public knows and move forward, and without objection, we will move forward. Mr. Burke, and then Mrs. Ritchie.
I want to thank the administration for their work in terms of an oversight role. From where I sit, I think it's highly quality and very, very well done. I just also wanted to thank all of the parents who have written in. Those emails have been, as Mr. Maroney said, terribly thoughtful, insightful, and informative, and they really have helped us do our work and sort through that so I really want to give my thanks to the people who took the time to give us their thoughts, and so well done, and thank you again for doing that.
Mrs. Ritchie?
So just briefly, I know that some schools have already established their grading, and it differs from what we would be implementing. If someone could just address briefly, if you have any concerns, or maybe you don't have any concerns about the inconsistency that we're likely going to see, even just within Lower Fairfield County in terms of the grading systems.
So probably Deb, that's a good question. Probably the biggest inconsistency potentially. One of the things we tried to do here as one of our principles is to respect the regional nature of this, both from the commissioner to start in Connecticut schools. So we have done that in the sense we've got some sort of version of pass-fail involved in that. We also work very closely with our local school systems that we would typically compare with. And there you'll see a variety of things come out. We're probably one of the first sort of to come out through the board process and complete this. but you'll see a variety of scenarios. One of them probably will be probably choice is probably, you know, something that you might hear that, well, the school system allowed the children to choose, and we consciously did not. We felt that the structure of this, the way we have it at the moment, and the fairness that we've built in for our children is very fair, and to go down a choice we felt would be a hard, and Megan can talk to this more, would be a hard way to fairly represent our students as one collective body, and we didn't want to pitch, well, one system is lower quality than the other system. And so we felt that it was important to actually stay as consistent as much as we can and as fair as we can. That's probably the biggest variation you might see between hybrids of this. I think that's the biggest thing, Deb, to be honest with you. The other things may just resonate. So.
Mr. Dwee?
I just, you know, again, I can echo enough the thank you to everyone, administrators, teachers, parents, everyone that's worked on this. I would say, I've said this before, Ellen and Megan and everyone, you know, think outside the box in terms of the resources that you may need. Communication is key. I want to say the board, we're here to support you, and in unusual times, we need to think unusually, and we're here to support you from a resource standpoint. When, you know, the phones start ringing and people want to talk and the students need to speak to their counselors, you know, just please be open to, and I know you are, letting us know what you need that we can continue to help support this whole unique situation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Maroney.
Sorry, one last question. On the frequently asked questions page, there's a question about finals and that there will not be finals this year, which honestly I think is the right move in some ways, because I don't know how you can prepare equitably, how you can take the test equitably. But my concern is for next year, and how do wouldn't finals be a gauge or some type of end of semester rubric or test to know how well or not well students performed in this quarter?
So I don't think the finals are, and Alan, you can certainly, if I'm not articulating this correctly, I don't think that not having finals, because the way the finals were, it was 40%, 40%, 20%, sort of worked out by numbers, right? But not having finals is not the same as not perhaps having some sort of cumulative, summative evaluation of what the kids have done through the quarter, right? But it's not like we're not doing the 40, 40, 20 and that type of stuff. So it's not going to preclude that. Dennis, I don't know whether you want to speak more to that, Alan, or not.
You know, I feel that it's finals as an exercise are important to inform us. You know, as we've discussed before, midterms and finals are good gauges for those things. We're just not in a circumstance right now to do that, and put students through that pressure at the end of this semester just seems impossible to me, and I think we probably all agree on that. So it's a data point that will be missing, Mr. Maroney, for sure. But I think it's one we can live without and move forward. We're going to have to spend some time, especially in courses in the fall, that where we begin reviewing in some areas if it's a progressive discipline, and spend some time you know, making sure that we are all where we need to be to move forward. So I just, you know, I'm sure there'll be opportunities. The capstone course in English will have the paper to write. The history courses that typically have a paper will be working with their students on those kinds of summative assignments that we feel are very, very important. But to put them through a 2-hour final, it's just impossible to imagine now. Yeah.
You know, Daz, I appreciate the question, and I very much appreciate the our staff's response to it, because, you know, we talk about the pressure that our students are on to perform in high rigorous situations, which is commonly the environment we're in. I applaud them for creating this is a time to create a wee bit of space. But even while we talk about that, we struggle to do it because we wear it like a badge of honor also to some degree. So they've tried to create a wee bit of space too by not having the final, and also looking at the system that tries to straddle the issues, but also recognize the social, emotional needs of kids, and try to create just a wee bit of a narrative while respecting all the rest of it.
Okay, so all right, Mrs. Ritchie and Mrs. McCammon. Mrs. Ritchie first.
I promise this is the last one, and it just popped into my head, and it's because I have a senior. So typically our seniors, the middle of May, would go off to their internships, and I know that's not going to happen. So of course, my senior's wondering, well, what's going to happen? Am I going to be going to school? If I'm going to school, am I going to be graded in the traditional fashion? So if maybe we could just indicate to people when a decision will be made on that, that would probably be helpful.
So I know Ellen has been talking to our seniors, and I've been doing a wee survey of the seniors. The general disposition of the people are coming back, which honestly that remains to be seen, and that's probably optimistic. But if we do have to plan for them coming back, if we're coming back, the system we currently have here is going to be in place, so that would continue. Ellen, I don't know if you want to comment further on what you found out from the kids when you surveyed them or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that they shared with me, and I want to have a chance to meet with the internship committee this afternoon and circle back about, what are our options moving forward. But a classical internship is clearly not going to be possible. And so I want to get that information out to the seniors and continue those conversations. But we will be, if we are back on the 20th, we will certainly be using the same grading system. They've probably just found out, if they're watching, that there would not be any finals for them. So that is one of the points of relief, I think, for them. And that, how we spend those last 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks with our seniors, many of them are interested in attending their classes and being with their friends and closing out their school year that they've missed so much. That seems to be the majority of the response. We talked about discussing options for senior projects. Most don't want to just have a 2-week project that becomes some other kind of assignment that they have to do at this point. So I'm assuming that a lot of what we would plan if we're back is to be engaged with their classes, with their teachers, with their classmates, to enjoy Darien High School for the last 2.5 weeks. I think that seems to be the majority. And then we're going to put together a graduation committee to start talking about what our plan B and plan C would look like if June 11th is not possible as well. So there's a lot of work to be done with the seniors, but we're happy to be engaging with them on that.
Thank you. Mrs. McCammon.
Thank you. I just was thinking back through some of the letters and some of the themes that came up. And one of the themes that came up a lot was keeping our students engaged and motivated. And I know part of keeping the third semester or quarter grade is keeping that engagement and that motivation in place. But can you talk more specifically to that? Because I do think it's a fear of the community that a portion of our students will just kick back and play Fortnite or whatever for the remaining quarter. And I know there's just a lot left to be learned, and that you all have thought about that. So I'd love to hear.
Ellen or Kristen, want to take that one?
Sure.
We're hoping that learning for the sake of learning can be encouraged for sure in this new environment. And that's part of the Pass with Distinction Pass model, really hopes to take off some of the pressure. What we have found is that we have very, very high engagement with our students, and have been so impressed by, and teachers, are constantly telling us how impressed they are with their willingness to participate and be involved, and that they're anxious to be involved. The fact that we're able to do so much live interaction with our students, I think has been really wonderful for them, for their psyche, to be with each other. kept our community together, even though we're not together in the building. So I'm not worried about our students not engaging and learning. I do think that this is challenging for sure, but I do think that the personal connection has been a huge piece of maintaining that. And teachers are still setting high expectations for them. And so I'm encouraged by the Pass with Distinction as a motivator for our students. And for those who, are not always performing beautifully in school, we have the options to support them as well. So I'm comfortable with the motivations that we have in place.
As I said in the most recent communication, our students and young people will rise to the expectations that we set them. I firmly believe that, and they have stepped up to the plate on that. I also would say that the structure of these practices and plan that we have actually allow the teachers more time to focus on teaching and learning, as opposed to specific grades and different. It allows them that opportunity to spend more time on quality instruction, and they've done an absolutely fabulous job in that. Fabulous job.
Mr. Tramber.
I would just add that the teacher learning piece has been pretty tremendous. I feel like we've had 5 years worth of technology professional development in just a few weeks. And seeing how teachers have stepped up has really resulted in new ways of engaging students in learning. And those are still happening. Joan McGettigan, our Director of Instructional Technology, has been tremendous. She is putting out new opportunities for teacher learning literally every single day. And as teachers have new learning, it's translating into new learning for students and new tools for students. And I think that'll be a critical component of keeping them engaged for the duration of the year.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Can I just mention,
I wanted to, may I just add one thing to that, Dr. Adley? It's Shirley, thank you. I just want to, and again, it's really to Jill's question, it's really a dynamic response with no guarantee. But I think what I hear from teachers and from related service providers and colleagues is that during, it's almost during this pandemic time, I think the relationships that kids have with their teachers and kids have with each other might be some assurance that they're going to want to continue that. That it's not just about the learning, it's about that engagement and having that kind of opportunity. So I think the relationships that have been fostered and already existed will help support, the ongoing learning.
I just want to piggyback Christopher's comment in terms of the community and the boards that have now and that have come before and so on, that the structures and the people and processes you have in place, if they weren't well planned, you can't do it on the fly, completely on the fly. Because of the people, the support staff who are just been phenomenal, our teachers, you committed to department heads. They've been very instrumental in supporting a lot of this work and getting it done, and to a point where we are now where we can advocate for this. So I would say to the community, thank you, because sometimes you feel like why are these positions important and so on? They're important now, right? Extremely important. And you're seeing the benefit of those personnel and those positions and processes and the infrastructure and the hardware and everything else. So I just want to make sure a big kudos for the community, the board, but also these people behind the scenes, because we couldn't be doing this at the level we're doing it without that. And it's easy just to overlook that, but anyway.
No, that dovetails perfectly into my closing comments. What I will say is I imagine when we go out with any plan, Mr. Sini.
Sorry, just quick. I didn't get a chance to talk, but I just want to send my appreciation. I think the administration, the teachers, and his supporting cast have threaded the needle beautifully in this very difficult environment in terms of grading. And so I fully support the proposal as brought forth. And thank you very much, Dr. Adley, for spearheading this.
All right, so Mr. Sini continues with Dr. Adley to set me up for my closing comments. Thank you, gentlemen. I would agree in the sense that we have threaded this needle, and it's a difficult needle to thread. So I imagine somewhere someone would have changed, tweaked, changed a detail. But I think anytime you see something that is not just a big box solution, something that is thoughtful, that clearly people put heart into for students, and with the guiding principle being of equity and do no harm to students, I think, again, this board should really be proud of, and this community should be proud of. I think that when we talk about parent emails, what we heard about is incentivizing students, not losing their attention, and also caring for them. And I think this plan works to take all those really esoteric factors into account. So it is much appreciated. I assume you will get these communications out to the public. And I think as long as we keep the well-being of our students and their ability to learn and grow at the forefront, we are doing the right thing. So thank you all. I know this has kept us all very busy for quite some time now. Hopefully everyone gets a cup of coffee in peace. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Stein so moves, and Mr. Deneen seconds. All in favor, we'll do this by roll call. Mrs. Ritchie, you're on.
Actually, I'm just going to ask if anyone is opposed or if anyone will abstain. No, then I will assume it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.